Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to BARCast TV and to another episode of BARCast Daily. It is June 16th, 2023. We have a very special guest here today, and joining us on the channel, it's none other than Andy. So, Andy, welcome to the channel.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you. I was really excited at the opportunity to kind of have a chance to talk to you about your Bar League matches. So this is what we're going to be examining today is Game 1 in your series against Daywalker.
This was our first game on my home map, Heartbreak Hill.
I really have enjoyed casting the few games I've seen on this map. I hate to say I haven't played any 1v1s on this map quite yet. Why did you pick this map as your home map?
There's plenty of different spots you can start, having the whole right and left sides. So I can mix up things. I can go bots, I can go vehicles on this map. Both kind of work. So it'd be harder to kind of research me for an opponent.
That was a great consideration. Of course, I had to pick up a home map, Certigata, but that's I didn't quite think about that. I just didn't want to play on Comet Catchers, so I just picked a different map. This is a great map, I'd say, and I've seen a lot of great or interesting games on it, I should say. So, you ended up opening Bot Lab on this. Is that just something you're more comfortable with currently, or do you see something in the meta going on?
I think I have a slight preference for bots on this map, just with all the extra pathing options. So yeah, core bots I kind of prefer to have in the matchup against arm bots. I don't like being on the other side of that matchup just because of grunts kiting.
Yeah.
Even though grunts have been nerfed, I still find it very annoying to deal with. So I'd rather be the one with the grunts against peewees if that matchup does occur. If we're in a vehicle matchup, then I'm happy to be either arm or core.
Okay. Is there a way you kind of like look at this map and consider which way you're going to be expanding from this position? So you're playing bots. Like, what part of the map are you looking to control as we kind of get into the early game?
So I've started here as bots because if I do happen to be against vehicle, this is a very defensible position with the only place you can come in to the north of it. So that's quite easy to defend, and I get a lot of mech spots quite freely then. Also, my general plan is to expand to the south with my commander, and then expand northways with bots, and also using most of my grunts up there. So my commander shouldn't have too much of a hard time expanding on his own, just with the way the geography of the map works.
That's a really interesting point, and something I've kind of always been curious about. There's this high ground hill that bots can't traverse, but on the opposite side of this starting location, where your opponent has spawned, there is this hill bots can traverse to kind of get to this high ground plateau. You can see Daywalkers kind of spawned in that position here, but as you pointed out, choosing this location is much more defensible against a vehicle player, as the only way to get into this main is through this choke point, as you mentioned. So
yeah,
really interesting point, because I was always curious to see, like, why would you spawn in this location, but that makes perfect sense. So thanks for that.
Yeah, I'd say the spots that we've both chosen this game are the two that I've used most on this map. Because sometimes I've taken the spot Daywalker's taken as well.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of, I guess, real estate up here on this high ground to kind of construct things that are very far away from your opponent. You can put some eco up. So you've decided to expand to this second level plateau with your commander, and you're going to be focusing on expanding to the north with your construction bots. Is this kind of tailored to bot lab openings, or is that just kind of your style? Or
I think in this position with the bot lab, so yeah, my commander just popping over that hill, it's hard for any attackers in my main base is going to have to come from like the middle or the north. So if I have my army mostly there, and my commander can kind of cover all the south expansion on his own without too much worry, and with a few laser towers. And then the ultimate plan would be to build a vehicle lab on the bottom and start to push into his main base, which by now I've figured out from my scouting grunts is to the south.
Okay. I have so many questions. Is expanding with the commander just something you do outright on every map, or is this kind of a decision you've made? And furthermore, what are your thoughts about a second factory and proxying one, besides putting it in your main bases?
I think expanding with the commander is kind of the standard, and keeping it in base and guarding the factory, that's more for kind of specific niche strategies where you're trying to guard out a lot of units early on for some kind of pressure or rush. I think having the commander's presence on the map, especially with the recent changes, is just too important to miss. Putting him in some strategically important place on the map to hold is just so valuable.
Let alone how he can defend himself as he expands. It's not quite like a liability having this outside here, to a certain point in the match, of course. And then your thoughts on building a proxy factory, say on this map. I think you mentioned putting it somewhere here on this high ground, a second land factory. Is that just like the position you want to have your build power there, or is it like diversifying between these two locations?
Yeah, I think the main thing of having a factory on the front is it lets you react a lot quicker to the opponent. So if you say you want to change from building brutes to the artillery, you switch building and it's just there straight away on the front. Whereas if it was still in your main base, you'd have to wait the minute or whatever for the unit to travel that way. Also, it just puts a lot more pressure on the enemy that everything hits that much quicker.
That can be, I mean, it's like the third resource in this game is time, or I mean, there's so much to be said about it. Like how long it takes a unit to construct, as you mentioned, like how long it takes to move across the map is just like another resource or consideration. So I see Daywalker is deciding to move towards the center with his commander, and I'm sure there's no like standard way to expand on this map, or
yeah, it's another.
What do you think about this movement here, this commander, or difference in commander movement between you two?
It's another reason why I'm quite happy to pick this map, is that it's quite unfigured out as of yet. So I think having the commander in the middle is a strong play. It's you kind of if he's on the middle plateau, if you want to raid, you have to go around him, which your raids will be seen on radar for a long time, so it gives the enemy a lot of time to react. Whereas if he has his army in the middle, he can poke out in lots of different directions, and it's hard for me to move my army around him to kind of defend as much. I think the middle is a good option.
Yeah, it seems like it. Say if we do control the middle, we can just kind of launch attacks to pretty much any part of the map pretty quickly. So
the only drawback I can see is that the middle isn't as mechs dense as the rest of the map. Yeah. A lot of the metal spots seem to be around the edges on this map.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's kind of interesting to see Daywalker isn't really emphasizing how many mechs there are right here in this little low ground area. That's, as we can see, you're kind of already moving into that. We have two of them capped. One radar is going up over here on the right side, and it's like you're attempting to get to that mass. It's definitely interesting to see the difference in how you two approach this. This was interesting. I noticed you have 2 grunts and 1 construction bot on repeat. Is that something you've kind of honed in on that number, or is it this map, or what was your thought process behind
that? That ratio, I'll fiddle with that all game, kind of depending on what I need at the time. At the moment, I'm not too worried about pawns attacking me. I know I can kite them around for days with grunts, so I'm not worried if I have, say, 8 grunts against 12 pawns. I'll just kite them around. So at the moment, I just want to try and increase my build power, kind of boom economically. So that's a ratio that I want at the moment. As you can see now, I've just changed it to 4 and 1. Now I've got a few more cons out.
I see we have one expanding construction bot at the kind of heading along the right side of the map. We have two construction bots adding on wind turbines and three assisting the factory. We have an additional construction bot heading up to the second level, and I will have to say something I really noticed on this map was your positioning of these radar towers. I can't really emphasize enough how good this is, and especially like when you consider like how you need to abuse a grunt superior range against pawns, or I guess even in higher numbers. So
I think one of the biggest differentiators between like really top level players, like top 10 players, and the people in the level below that is the amount of radar they build and use. It's such a strong tool. It lets you make better decisions and react to things much quicker. And so many good players I see not making enough radar, and I think if they just improve that, that would help them make a next step up.
And if I may add to that as well, I mean, on this right side of the map, you've built 0 LLTs. So, I mean, I see you have one made down here initially to protect these two mexes you moved away from with your commander. You made a few more down here on the plateau. I think that was to kind of protect units from moving in just like this, but because you want to take and expand to back here.
Yeah, that one pawn sneaked past the southern LLT, just taking damage, but not enough to kill it. But yeah, so the plan was mostly have my grunt army to the north to defend, and with my commander, I just built a few LLTs on the way, so I shouldn't have to waste time or micro or grunts down there.
So, what are your thoughts on timing of your second factory? Like, how do you know, or what triggers you into kind of creating that?
I guess it's just when the metal starts to go up. I think I'm a little bit late on it here with my metal count, but with a bot opening going heavy on grunts, it is hard to kind of keep spending that metal because they're very energy expensive.
Yeah.
As you can see, my commander just reclaiming some trees there just to try and keep the energy up.
I will say that the trees on this map have a lot of energy in them. I haven't. This is like 800.
Yeah, I sent a con out to start building nanos before I even started the lab, just as kind of a pre-planned build power to be ready there for when the lab finishes.
I'm not sure like how well a conversation on nanoturrets would be in kind of this context, but I mean, obviously, for like you made this before your decision to make the factory, so obviously you put some kind of value on having these out in the middle of the field. Is that something you've kind of been experimenting with, or like how did you find out that?
It's just that I want to use that lab to be building as many units as I can as soon as it's built. I don't want to spend time building constructors to get the build power there. So as you see, I'm just building one vehicle con and then getting straight into the units. If I had to build, say, 4 or 5 construction vehicles to get the build power there, it'll slow down everything that's coming out of that lab.
So at this point in the game, where do you think you're at? What moves are you considering making?
So the plan is put pressure on his bottom left side with the vehicles I'm getting, keep expanding and using the grunts to just kind of control space, see where his army's at, get any poking and harassment I can do. And then I've just switched also out of grunts into thuds to put pressure on middle. So I'm happy with my amount of grunts that I can kind of stave off any pawn attacks and just kind of kite them around. And now I want to have pressure on middle with my thuds. I can kind of send my grunts around to the north side and keep poking that way and have the vehicles pressuring on the bottom.
This is really great. Really great play so far. I mean, we can take a look at your radar position relative to your grunts. So you have 2 groups on the top and bottom side, kind of preventing any kind of pawn run-bys. So you can, get into position and kite them accordingly. And as you mentioned, you're going to be pressuring this bottom side. And I noticed earlier, I watched this replay beforehand, you made 2 pounders before you went into brute production. Is that just to kind of stave off?
That's just kind of some insurance from if I get rushed by, say, 30 pawns trying to kill my commander. having a couple of pounders there just makes that pretty impossible. Whereas if I had two brutes there, they wouldn't really help much at all. So that's just kind of like an insurance, and then I'll switch into the brutes.
Hmm. That's a really interesting point because we're approaching that time in the game where your commander is pretty vulnerable. If I suppose if you make the
Hmm.
wrong move. And
Yeah, so around about now, you need to be a lot more careful with him. You can't just kind of be on the map fully exposed.
yeah, it's a pretty unforgiving game. RTS is so. I'm gonna have to start. This is just kind of thinking of like more questions to ask. Is like, do you think it's better to open bots into like a forward vehicle, or it's like vehicle into a forward bot lab? Because it seems like having the
I
forward
think
vehicle lab's a little better um, as you get into the
I,
mid game.
I think both can work. On Comet, my standard team seems to be the opposite of vehicle lab at the back and then a K-bot lab somewhere near the middle. Mostly there because the vehicles are much quicker at reinforcing, and I quite like them early game as well. If you go K-bots from the back, you're pretty much stuck on grunts because the amount of time it would take anything else to get to the front is pretty long.
Grunts are such
So
a
this
interesting unit. Sorry, go ahead.
mm, at this point, I'd noticed he was building plasma bots at the bottom, and it was becoming evident to me that this kind of battle for this wreck field at the bottom would be quite important. So I switched the don't know if I've done it yet in the game, but I switched the constructor towers on my vehicle lab to high priority, just to try and make sure I get the units out there. I've not done it yet, but I guess I'll do it in the next 20, 30 seconds or so.
Right.
Because if he gets some res bots on there, that's going to become a push that I just can't stop, and I'll end up losing my vehicle lab.
Those reclaim fields are I suppose like the game swinging moments or areas as we kind of get into the later parts of the mid game once armies start trading. You have to be really aware of at these levels of play, aware of how much mass you're leaving, where it's where it is and whatnot. So it's interesting to hear you be thinking about a reclaim field that is about to be forming and what you're going to be doing doing about that.
Yeah, so he's got his plasma bots here, and they're slow. They're not going to be anywhere else on the map, so he's definitely concentrating on this area, seeing the importance of it. So
Mm-hmm. Is this something you're looking to kind of trade out these grunts as we get into the mid game, or are you just trying to find damage, or what is this intention here?
both keeping his units up there, so he can't have those pawns helping at the bottom at the moment because they're trying to help defend.
Mm-hmm.
I can maybe get some damage done, abuse the grunts better range, and it's got to the stage now where I've kind of secured top. I've got a few light laser turrets down. I've got good radar coverage. I'm not too worried about being harassed by pawns at the moment, so may as well get them out on the map and see what I can do.
Yeah, I might pause this for a minute and expose the entire board, but kind of as you mentioned, we know because of the unit composition that's down here, Daywalker is going to be using his factory to reinforce his position, and I don't see any other forward kind of factory, so your unit movement over here on the left hand side is kind of completely protecting this top right expansion. And I'm not sure if you're aware, like if he has two factories or not. Nothing's really kind of giving that away.
Yeah, nothing's indicated that, and I think also the few thuds in the middle. There's only a few of them there, but it's kind of something that he needs to deal with, and it's a difficult choice for him to choose. Like, what does he use to deal with that now? Because he's got pawns trying to deal with the grunts. Does he use his commander to try and hold off the middle thuds? But that'll take a lot of attention and micro to not just get kited there. But also he's got to worry about bottom as well.
There's a lot of action going on. I will say, like, it's kind of interesting. These thugs are more effective than their was it the Rocketeer, the thing that's actually designed, I suppose, to deal with those LLTs. Mm-hmm. It's like the thug is just more efficient in that. I guess you can kind of micro and forget it for as you attack move into that area.
Yeah, it's time-wise, it's a lot easier for me to just move them in there and then forget about them. But for him to deal with it takes a lot more attention and micro.
Right, very, very efficient unit.
So yeah, whilst these other fights are going on, that's just something that's nice to have, something throwaway you can just do that gives the other guy a problem. So the constructor towers should be on high priority
Yeah,
now.
yeah, we just saw this. What do you think? Looking at these maces, like what unit composition do you think is best for dealing with that? I mean, I guess it's obviously the stout here or the brute.
Yeah, I think stouts is probably best. The levelers are okay if you can kind of get in range, but you kind of get kited a bit if they're paying attention.
Hmm.
You see, I've not been paying attention to my grunts the last few minutes, and he's just walked through them with some pawns. So that's the trickiness with grunts is that you need to always be on top of them because just one moment lapses and then the pawns get on top of you.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've been in that situation where I send my grunts across the map to kind of find damage, and I'm over macroing, and I come back and they're just all destroyed because I was standing underneath radar coverage, and my enemy moves into position. So this is, I mean, I think a pretty strong position. Your grunt attack on the left side, you kind of confirmed he doesn't have this all these mechs as caps. So, I mean, you have to feel ahead economically at this point, or like what?
Yeah, I think I'm probably ahead at this point. And I'm thinking if I can win this fight at the bottom, then I'll have a big lead. But I'm also starting to be worried about the stuff. So I've not seen a second lab. He's armed, so he also has the option for gunships, which are quite effective on this map, it being so big.
Right.
So I'm not getting complacent or anything at this stage. Mixing a couple of artillery just to try and help get rid of that beamer.
Hmm. I mean, I have a lot of separate questions outside of the game I could ask you. Like, what do you think about kind of like playing on these larger maps, and is like the intention to like have a winning move, or are you like looking to split the map and macro and just kind of see what happens? Like, what is your game plan on these larger maps that might not end in the first 10, 15, 20 minutes?
I think it's hard to have a plan for the whole game. I think having a plan for maybe the first 6 to 8 minutes is good, and then just seeing where you're at from there.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe just a general expansion pattern, and this is just say you're against a random guy, and obviously if you're against individuals at the top level, then there's only a handful of people there, so you kind of get to know people's styles and
Mm-hmm.
preferences, so you kind of tailor your play to that.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
But yeah, I'd say my plan for this game was just expand to the south with my commander, expand north with cons and my army, and then kind of that was it. Just see the state of the game from there and kind of play it out.
Mm. Are you ever looking to like add on a third factory, an air factory from this position here? When the map kind of, I mean, it seems like the game's kind of slowed down a little bit. I mean, we have kind of this standoff here in the bottom part. He has control of mid. You have camped with these brutes, or excuse me, thugs. And I'm sure you're kind of anticipating some kind of attack from the north at this point, or
Um, at the moment, I was kind of just concentrating on the bottom. I was thinking if I can take that, it's going to be a big swing in kind of momentum. I'd seen he was moving units away, so kind of attacking that forces his hand to either come back or commit to an attack somewhere else. And with this attack being so close to his main base, he kind of has to try and deal with it.
has a lot of build power. Oh my goodness, all those radar signatures are construction bots. I thought those were all thugs actually. So this is a really great radar positioning here. You can see like all the movement on this plateau here.
Mm.
Um,
So yeah, that attack I did at the south was all thanks to that radar that I just built because I could see his units moving away.
like out of position. Yeah, that was a really strong move. And we can see like you're gonna clear out these 4 mexes. There's a couple beamers you're gonna get through, but I mean really this is a terrible position to have because you can just threaten putting artillery on that high ground and shelling the main base. So what are you thinking now that you've kind of won this battle here? Is there?
Yeah, so I want to try and secure as many wrecks as I can. There is a bit of concern at the north side because I did lose all my grunts when I lost my attention against those pawns. So I do only have slow thuds up there to defend. So I'm gonna take some losses there, but I think I'll probably still end up ahead.
Did you control D one of those towers? Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I controlled the low ones.
Okay.
I think if I hadn't got that off, it only just went off in time. I
Sorry.
may have been in trouble there.
Yeah, sorry I missed that. I came back for. I thought that was those two turrets were gonna go down to like that number of pawns, but I was kind of missed that there.
Yeah, control the turrets is very strong.
Yeah, something I haven't really tried practicing, kind of using that, but when I've seen it work, I mean it's it's definitely effective for
Yeah.
the mechanic.
When you're playing against someone who knows this trick, it kind of makes it a little cat and mouse game between LLTs and units because you're running in thinking, is he about to blow this up? Should I kind of pull back and then go back in? Or try and mess up his timings? It becomes a bit of a mini game in that regards.
Just layers and layers of strategies. You'll kind of I can really appreciate kind of how RTS has evolved into that dance you see between certain units or interactions. I think that's cool to see. You found the time to make a couple artillery to kind of harass this middle part of the board.
Yeah, so I'd built those initially for the south bit to kind of break the BMO that was down there just outside my vehicle lab. And then after that was battle was when I repurposed them to middle.
I mean, so from here, I mean, you have to be feeling pretty good about your position. I mean, you've pushed Daywalker off of the middle of the board. You have the whole right side of the map secured. This bottom high ground. Are you thinking like, how do I lose this game? Are you starting to add on anti-air or like?
Yeah, so I have started to put anti-air, thinking like, okay, this game is. I've got a big lead now. What ways can I lose it, kind of thing.
Yep, there's the anti-air turrets, of course.
So sometimes now I'd go air just so I could build an atlas to kind of take my commander back home if I felt like my commander was in a particularly vulnerable area.
Right.
I feel quite safe where he is at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen you. I've seen a couple of those hot pickups you've made. It's pretty cool to think like, okay, so when you're in this winning position and the vulnerability is of course losing the commander, your instinct is to get an air transport.
Yeah.
They're not that expensive really. I mean, it's just you have so much build power here too. I mean, you could put it here or in the main, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Whenever I do go air, one of the first things I build is that kind of Atlas. Well, sorry, it was called Atlas in Total Annihilation, but the air transport, just as like insurance for my commander, and just kind of put it somewhere, not right where he is, but just kind of nearby, so it can come pick him up if needed.
Yeah, almost even like a bait too. I'd imagine it's like.
It can be, yeah.
That's such an interesting part of this style RTS is it seems like how long some of the actions take. Like you issue a move command and your army might start fighting like 30 seconds later or a minute later. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like your opponent really has to commit to attacks. It seems like to there can be a lot of dancing and posturing in this game.
Yeah, earlier we were kind of talking about the advantages and disadvantages of a forward lab. So this game, Daywalker didn't have one, and it's been difficult for him to put any pressure on the kind of top side and top northeast side of the map with any units that weren't pawns.
Right.
Just because of the time it would take them to get across for the plasma bots and such.
Yeah. Maybe that's kind of given the current state of the commander, of course. I would agree it does lend. It's like it's too good not to use as expanding or locking down a position, an important position on the map. So maybe having this meta of like, moving with the commander somewhere in the middle of the map and then adding on your second factory. But it's just like a great way to, as you described, launch attacks against your opponent that are maybe like higher tick or higher mass units than the pawn. is there is there ever an instance where you kind of see a commander in a position and think, I can attack him and win the game, or I can attack somewhere else and do damage that isn't here? Like, which one of those do you kind of lean towards, or I mean, are you? What
I
do you?
think it depends on the state of the game. So this is a game where I feel quite comfortable at the moment, so I'm not going to kind of make any rash attack on his commander where I might get a lot of stuff degunned or I might not quite kill it and end up giving a lot of wrecks.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if it was a game where I felt behind, I'd be more willing to take that risk and try sniper commander.
The number of medium tanks it takes, the math has changed a little bit. I'd say before the most recent change. Interesting enough, stouts outrange commanders by quite a bit. So I mean, you can kite them pretty efficiently. This is kind of like a Hail Mary desperate attack. You know, attacking uphill is against a res beamer turret isn't exactly.
Yeah, well, if I was in Daywalker's position, I'd be doing something similar, just kind of trying to go all in where on the position where I think the commander is.
Yeah, it was kind of unfortunate the position because I saw what he was doing. He just kind of knows your commander is up there, so he can snipe you. But you had this army chasing his commander, so he couldn't quite wait till like the two came together, and it was like a race against time between these three armies kind of forming together to kind of protect their commander. So you do what you can to try and like find the W, you know. Kind of run out of options eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was a really interesting game. Do you have any kind of like closing thoughts or things you'd like to share?
Well, I was very, very pleased to get this win because I think Daywalker's one of the strongest players in the group. So this is one of the kind of toughest matches I anticipated. There's Daywalker's he's that guy in the friend group who's like good at all games. So I'm good at RTSs, but Dave's good at RTSs, FPS. Any game he touches, he seems to be really good. So even though he doesn't play much bar, I know he's going to be strong whenever he does play.
Yeah.
And we've got a long history in Balanced Annihilation before this, where we were kind of very similar level then as well.
It's nice having those friends you have a little bit of a rivalry with, or suppose.
A very friendly rivalry.
Yeah, of course. Maybe I could ask you one question. Is there anyone you see, perhaps, kind of like up and coming player? You think? I don't know. Like, what are your predictions in the groups? Maybe I don't know if this is too broad of a question, but something I'd be.
I think in Group A, I think the main contenders would probably be Goopy, Ragnar, Daywalker, and myself. I'd say those four kind of slightly above the other four. But I think we're all close enough as well that anyone can beat anyone on their day. So I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing a few surprise results and looking for some interesting replays to watch.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely be hosting some kind of Bar League update on Sundays, so you can kind of stay tuned for that. I'll be going over the match results and hopefully kind of pick an interesting game to analyze. So that being said, Andy, thanks for coming on the channel. I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of analyze a game with me.
And no problem. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for that. I'll leave a link to Andy's YouTube channel for sure, so be sure to check him out. Like his videos, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching.